Greetings and salutations all. Welcome to this special board meeting on Monday, April 17th, 2023. Would you please join us in standing for the pledge of, pardon me. Roll call first. Mr. Atkins.
Mr. Alexander?
Present.
Ms. Autry?
Present.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Jackson? Mrs. McKittrick?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Thank you. Would you all please join me in standing for the pledge of allegiance? Vice President Autry, would you lead us, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next, we'll proceed to request to address the board. Start with, we've got Jacqueline Parker here to talk about Leggett CLC. Okay. All right. She's not present. Okay. All right. Next, we'll go to Steve Millard. And let me read the preamble here. Request to address the board here. I don't have it. Let's see. Okay. 1 second here. Yeah. Here we go. Here we go. Oh. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. So, Steve, this is just our preamble that we do for every board meeting. So, with regard to requests to address the board, participants will not be permitted to speak on matters related to vendors, business matters, formal complaints, grievances, specific student or student records, personnel matters, and pending legal matters. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The board will not respond, but will assign through the superintendent the appropriate person for follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Good evening, members of the Akron Board of Education. My name is Steve Millard. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Akron Chamber. We're the region's metropolitan chamber of commerce, representing more than 2,100 employers, including Akron Public Schools, dozens of college and career academy partners, and many employers of APS parents, not to mention current and future graduates. We've appreciated the opportunity to work closely with the district leadership over time. I address the board this evening directly on this special meeting's purpose and respectfully ask you to delay the search for a new superintendent and treasurer until after this November's election. Allow me to state 3 reasons for this request. First, governance and leadership alignment. 2 current board members are stepping down. 1 is running for city council. 3 members, almost half the board, will be selected in November. The superintendent and treasurer are the only employees chosen by the board. They run the district. The children, staff, and community need them to be totally aligned with the board if our schools are to continue to improve and our children succeed. That begins with the recruitment and selection process. Choosing now gravely risks non-aligned purpose and potential poor working relationships and bad results. We cannot risk the instability of losing more top professional leaders. Second, candidate quality. It's extremely late to start a search to find the world-class candidates Akron needs in these jobs. Many Ohio districts have completed theirs already. 3 of the largest districts, Columbus, Cleveland, and Olentangy, started superintendent searches much earlier. Dayton is looking for a new leader too. Many current leaders have signed to stay put. Getting the superintendent and treasurer we need will take major recruitment efforts, given the unique challenges faced by urban education. Let's give this vital process the time it needs. Third, interim leadership is in place. The board has already acted to entrust experienced professionals with interim leadership responsibilities. These leaders can be relied on to continue to serve the district until the new board members are elected and a search can be completed. As such, we encourage you to take the time to conduct a thorough search with extensive community engagement and input and feedback from parents, key APS partners, and other community members that will allow the board to bring on new leadership by mid-2024. In summary, we ask that you allow the new board to lead this search for their new leaders, leave the interims in place, and give the future new leadership and APS students the best possible chance to succeed. As I mentioned, that success begins with an aligned APS board, superintendent, treasurer, educators, and community. The business community wants the best possible outcomes for APS students. Those students are our community's future workforce and leaders. I appreciate your willingness to consider this perspective, and we look forward to working with you on the challenges and the opportunities ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now, I don't have anybody else on the list here. Was there a sign-in list? I have to make sure that, okay. So this is not the usual way of doing things, but I didn't see a sign-in sheet. So is there anybody that is in the audience that would have signed up to address the board Again, we would give you 3 minutes as well, just to make sure. Okay.
I'm not sure if you were just discussing school board members or anything at this point. Okay. All right. Hi. Good evening. My name is Joyce Laney. I am a resident of Kenmore. I am a proud graduate of Kenmore High School, class of 73, celebrating our 50th reunion this year. I am a resident. I am a taxpayer. I will read what I wrote. I'm sure by now you've all made up your minds pretty much regarding the matter of our Kenmore school system. I doubt very much my letter will sway many of your decisions. However, this vote by this board gives you the opportunity to correct some of the things that was the mistakes and misguided mistakes of the past boards. You know that our community is angry, we're hurt, and we've been very disappointed. We feel so overlooked as a community. The second largest community in the city of Akron, and we have always gotten the shaft. We've lost so much. We've lost schools. We've lost families to bordering school districts. We've lost businesses. We've lost involvement by our current councilman. He doesn't even come to these meetings to represent us. With a small group of citizens, we are trying to rebuild our neighborhood, rebuild our community, rebuild our schools. One of the ways we need to do this is to have an anchor, a school in our community. Our schools now are on our outlying borders of our schools. We've lost Smith. We've lost Heminger. We've lost Lawndale. We've lost Margaret Park. We've lost Immaculate Conception. Now we're looking to do something with the kids from Pfeiffer. And Miller South needs a new building. So we were asking you, pleading you, please give us a new Pfeiffer and a Miller South on the current Kenmore High School campus property. I'm praying for your decision to be positive towards Kenmore, and I hope you do the right thing. And I think our community would just be so happy that the board finally did something for us rather than against us. There's businesses on the boulevard that are a lot in music, recording studios, music venues, which I know don't have a lot to do with school students, but when you're performing arts and you're into music and you're into dance and you're into that, when we've got a music store and we've got recording studios and we've got a dance studio, all of these things would just tie so greatly together in our community. And I just hope that you think about all of that when you make your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's make sure I didn't miss anybody else. Yes, please state your name.
Okay, so my name is Christopher Anderson. I am running for school board. I want to add on to the decision for the superintendent. I also believe that it should be a decision for the next board, not this one. I also want to make sure to advocate to, so it is so important for us to consider Kenmore schools and the neighborhood value that happens when you move a school and move students. So I really hope that those considerations will take it forward. Thank you so much. And I live at 456 Sumner Street.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Ms. Boyce.
Good evening, board members, those who are here. I am acting currently as the former executive director of Kenmore Neighborhood Alliance when I read this to you. I think I mentioned in my last presentation to you that we had a petition that had been circulating in order to save Pfeiffer Elementary School and get something done with the Kenmore High School property. And I just thought it was a great time to read that to you because I don't think it's ever been publicly stated. So, this is attention, Akron Public Schools Administration and Board and the City of Akron. We, the residents and advocates of Kenmore, demand that Akron Public Schools not take yet another action to disinvest in Kenmore's community. Schools are an important anchor, and Kenmore's schools have dwindled from 10 to only 4 that are currently in use. Now, district leaders are discussing closing Pfeiffer Elementary School while the former Kenmore High School building sits vacant overlooking Kenmore's jewel, the Kenmore Boulevard Historic District, which Joyce alluded to. As the residents and stakeholders of Kenmore, we demand do not further disinvest in our neighborhood, allowing the former Kenmore High School building to sit vacant and unused, as occurred with not one, but two of our elementary schools, Lawndale and Smith, in just the past few years. Instead, we demand that you invest in Kenmore by supporting this important community asset in the following ways. Maintain Pfeiffer Elementary School as an open, functioning, neighborhood-serving school and create a plan to rebuild. Create a STEAM school in the former Kenmore High School building, blending STEM and the arts, or move some other APS school to the site. Or create a dynamic recreational sports complex at the site, something that would serve APS in the entire city while filling a long-time gap in our community's infrastructure. Do not disinvest in Kenmore's youth or in the Kenmore community any further, as you have done repeatedly in the past by allowing APS buildings to be purchased by negligent property owners only to be vandalized, set on fire, and razed. We demand better. You must begin handling all decisions about school facilities, investments, and decommissioned properties through a thoroughly transparent process that takes into account the potential impacts on the surrounding communities, the school building's role as an anchor and attractor of additional private investment, and best practices in other districts. No school properties in any neighborhood should be sold simply to the highest bidder, as Lawndale and Smith were. Every property must be made available through an RFP process, where potential owners provide a plan for reuse, whether a building or land, and demonstrate the capacity to execute the plan. Any sales should be contingent on assembling financing and include a contingency for reversion back to the district if it fails to come together within a certain amount of time. To the City of Akron, we remind you of Kenmore's support of your 2003 levy and your promises to rebuild all the schools, a promise that was later broken in Kenmore time and time again. We stand with Mayor Horgan, who has clearly stated on record, no land swaps until there's a plan for North and Kenmore High Schools, which we're discussing now. Yet, with roughly 10 months remaining in the term, there is no plan that threatens to move Kenmore backwards despite our community's many revitalization efforts. We're pleased to see that there is a potential option in play that does not do that. With a whole new slate of candidates vying to take Mayor Horgan's place, we ask this: what is your position on Kenmore High School and the closure of additional schools in the Kenmore community? Kenmore stands ready and mobilized to hold you to your word. Drafted by the Kenmore Neighborhood Alliance with 1,508 signatures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina. I think I covered everybody that wanted to speak tonight. Was there anybody else that we didn't speak? And again, our apologies for not having the sign-up sheet available. So we'll make sure we have that amended next time. Next, we'll move to item 2.1, which is it's discussion topic 1. It's interview firms for the superintendent search. Let's see, what order are we doing this in? So we have Ray and Associates as the first one slated to present to the board. So, sir, the floor is yours. Whoever microphone is there, and do you have slides that we're going to put up here as well?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sure, absolutely. Sounds good. Roger that. Okay, roger that. Thank you.
So good evening. We'll try to be time sensitive as well.
Sure.
Is there a chance we can get Dale on the screen now, please?
Yes, they're on the side monitor.
Yeah, but is he up there? Okay, if you can do whatever you could to get him in. We have an associate that's not supposed to be on the screens,
Okay, roger that.
okay, who's part of the team that we're going to talk about here.
Okay.
So welcome, and thank you for this time, and thank you for the privilege of selecting us as one of your finalists to consider for being your search firm for your next leader. We're absolutely flattered. Our home office is based in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. However, as president, I happen to reside in Westerville, Ohio. And I bring with me, and we'll ask Liz to introduce herself in a minute, who's 45 minutes up the road. So we are Ohioans. So I'm Mike Collins. I have the privilege of being president of the firm. I've been with the firm since the very beginning of 2017. We have scores of associates around the country, et cetera. But most importantly is we're going to share a little bit about our process, but given the sensitivity of time, when you give us that alignment, we're not going to go through a complete deck. You also read better than I speak, and you have the full proposal, which is somewhat of a recite if I went through the deck. So we're going to be very respectful of that. So as I introduce you to the team, and I'm Mike Collins, biggest thing for you is, besides being a business owner for 40 years, I come to you as one of you. I served 2 terms on the Westerville School Board, and I spent 2 terms as an elected member of the State Board of Education. And I was engaged in education in my first 11 years. Both my degrees were there, and then I became a business owner, but I spent 16 years on school board. Liz, if you'd be so kind to introduce yourself, because we're thrilled to add Liz to our associates list.
Absolutely. Good evening. Can you hear me? All right. Okay. My name is Liz Kirby. I am the newest associate with the team. I also currently serve as the superintendent of the Cleveland Heights University Heights School District. I'll be at 4 years come this August. Prior to that, I was in Chicago Public Schools for over 23 years, where I was a teacher, principal, network chief, which is like a regional superintendent. In my last role, I oversaw all of the regional superintendents in all of the schools. So I have vast experience in leadership development, but also leadership identification and support. And happy to meet you all.
Okay. All right. Dale, I think you're up there. Do you mind introducing yourself, please? Being told you're up there. All right. Dale, can you hear us? I'm not sure. All right. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to introduce Dale. We've been working together for a long time. So Dr. Dale Caldwell has been one of you for 24 years. He's president of his school boards, soon not to be president, which he's been for a very long time. He's also president of the New Jersey Special Needs. It's a statewide system for special needs. He chairs that board. He is one of our national associates. We have 4 of those. All the rest are regional. So he works with us all over. He's also been the New Jersey School Board Member of the Year. And he currently has just been named as the president of Centenary College, which he'll serve, which is in New Jersey. So his work in this field, he also, by the way, does school board training and governance and so forth extensively. Kathy Schoenfelter is our vice president in the home office. She's the one that will interface with the district that already has. She's key to all the operations that go on. So this team comes to you with experience in the seat, having sat in your seats, and most importantly, doing somewhere between 60 and 70 placements a year. However, because we're in Ohio, we feel very, very affectionate about Ohio. So at this time, we see ourselves as much an Ohio firm as a national firm. The difference you're going to have with that, whether you continue on this schedule or some other schedule that may happen, is given the fact that demand has outstripped supply in the superintendency across the country, you need a firm that has both Ohio roots. I also used to serve on the Ohio School Boards Association Board of Directors. Congratulations. And actually was on their executive committee when I was on the Westerville School Board. And I have great relationships with all the other state associations. So the linkages of your region with Liz 45 minutes up the road, us in Ohio, and then us nationally is one of the greatest assets we bring to you. Very quickly, this is what it says in the proposal you received in summary. We are the oldest firm in America. Actually, we've now crossed the 1,600. We're over 1,700 completed place searches. We also have the largest pool of candidates in America that we continually work with. We have a comprehensive support of associates, Liz being one. There are over 50, and they're in different segments around the country, with people like Dale serving nationally. We also have the largest full-time staff of any search firm in America. And then the biggest thing of all, in terms of any engagement that you want, in terms of the community and participation, we are all trained in the facilitation process, so engagement is one of our specialties. They all do it. We believe we do it better than anybody. Our leadership outreach is because our first step is with our scores of associates, because they all have the same tentacles Liz and I have in Ohio, for example, in their regions. They will all know about this search the minute we're awarded. So they become they're kind of like that first line. Then we have outstanding relationships with all the state associations still, and our relationship with the National Education Associations, which where the national advertising goes, we are either first or second in the amount of ads placed in any given year, so our relationships are straight up, and Kathy and the Home Office manages all that. We also have the largest website traffic. Now, at this time of year, we're actually over 30,000 unique visits per month. Our average is 28,000. We do a two-part in-depth background check. So the first part will be the ones that we do as an associate team, where we'll do all the interviews, the candidates, references, and all those things. The biggest thing is we'll do the social media searches and the news media searches of all the candidates before we bring them to you. When we bring those to you, we'll not only bring all this information, we'll actually bring videos. We were the first ones. These are actual videos of each of the candidates. They have to answer 3 questions. They have 90 seconds to answer it, and they've not seen them before. What you get is a sense of demeanor of each of the candidates you're going to consider, and also how well they perform on their feet. That gives you a very different introduction. And then the biggest thing is you have to remember, most importantly, this is your search. We have all the experience you can find. We are very good at what we do. But the fact of the matter is we are here as your consultants and your ambassadors. This is yours. We also specialize in putting the board in the best place possible throughout the search process. 2 things that are mentioned here is that the number one thing is that we would like very much to have this search be something that builds a sense of cohesiveness within the board by going through the process. Those are our experiences. And we would like this, we're hopeful, which has been proven true, even on districts that we have done in the last 2 years, that have been on CNN for all the other federal environments while we were doing the searches. And what the other part that occurs is that by really engaging the community and using our skills and talents, this search actually can become and does become something that helps unite the community and the board together. So that's very big, but it's your search. You're going to set all the parameters. You're going to make all the right decisions. We're here to advise you and be your ambassador. And then we do assist with contract finalization, and most importantly, we come back every 6 months as often as you want us, just to do a survey and a test and stay engaged with the placement. So we're not here to thank you very much and say bye-bye. And we have obviously capacities to be of assistance to you and the selectee. The last 2 things that are in your proposal, and we'll conclude so we can have real conversation, which is most important, is that we have 2 guarantees. The first guarantee is that if the search doesn't work out within a 2-year process, within a 2-year period, with the exception of health and acts of God, we would come back and do the search at no cost with the exception of advertising and travel. And over 1,700 placements, we have not reached 20 of the times we've had to do that. And then secondarily is that we have a 5-year guarantee. We believe in sustainability and the importance of superintendents staying to build a foundation and then to implement it. And what that means is we will not come back to any candidate and present any opportunity to them and any candidate that we've placed until they've sat there for at least 5 years. And the last thing I'll tell you is in an urban community like Akron, the average sitting time for a superintendent is 2 to 3 years across the country. Our average is 6 years, 7 months. And then lastly, we also are very proud of the fact that though we bring the best fit and the best candidates for your environment, we place more women and more persons of color in the superintendency than anybody in America. Have for a while, and actually it's on a percentage basis. But that percentage is stronger than ever. And 40% of our associates are either women or persons of color. So we don't talk about it, we exercise. With that, I'd like to entertain, Mr. President, I'd like to entertain questions and comments, because I'm concerned about us having enough time.
Sure, absolutely, sure. So open the floor to members of the board that may have questions or comments. Mr. Yep.
And just so I heard this correctly, you said that if you helped us choose a superintendent and it didn't work out, that you would come back and help us research for no charge? Okay.
Other questions? Ms. Autry.
Thank you. So I heard you mention something about uniting boards and communities. Can you speak a little bit more to that, specifically, what that looks like?
Yeah, I don't know if you want them to at Cleveland Heights.
Well, yeah, when I actually went through this process as the candidate, so I experienced all of the things that Mike talked about in terms of what candidates go through. One thing that was really important for that process was to collect information around what were the ideals and principles and qualities, of course, that the community was looking for, but also having an authentic process where you can engage in questions and answers with the community to really understand what those dynamics were. School districts are having a rough time right now for multiple reasons. And so the process of selecting a superintendent is an opportunity to bring people together to really kind of talk about the issues that are out there and the things that they're looking for in a candidate to make sure that they really are the best fit. As much as boards are looking for candidates, candidates are also interviewing boards. They want to make sure that they're going into a place where they can thrive and also that they align, philosophically with the board and the community. So that's a piece of the process of gathering that information, building the profile, going through the process, selecting the questions where you see that when I think about the questions that I had when I was a candidate, I now see the dynamics of the community and exactly why those questions were asked of me at that time as a candidate.
Yeah, we have a structured process, and structure's our friend. At the same time, it's a structured process that gives a sense of authenticity, transparency to the community, and they participate. They're told why, where it fits in the process, when they get to come back in the finalist environment, particularly if you choose to do that. That's really a specialty of ours. They also will have a chance to cast their impressions. We tell them right up front, you don't vote. You don't pick candidate 1 or candidate 2, because in reality, it's a false expectation. They don't have to vote by law, and they're all 50 states. But we have an impression form that will give you charts and graphs before you make a decision. What are the impressions based on a set of criteria of each one of the finalist candidates based on their engagement? And now with technology and streaming and those opportunities, we're very comfortable with having whatever meetings and community meetings being extended to the greater community and then giving them an opportunity. And all of that information will be run by us. Okay, so there is some help we need from the district, but none of those things are burdens on the district whatsoever. So, and just real quick to the final part of that is, with this engagement on the front end, building a profile of who you're looking for, which becomes part of our rubric of who we even recommend for you to consider to interview, and we ask you to use that profile as you select who you want to interview in the semifinals and who you want to interview in the finalists. All that information comes from 3 places. We do individual board interviews of each of you. We do these focus groups, and typically we do them anywhere, a place like here, we'll probably do 12 to 15 to 20 focus groups. So we did, when we were doing Cleveland Heights, we also did Shaker Heights at the same time. Shaker Heights gave us 31. So I'm not lobbying for 31, I just want to share.
Right.
But we will bring our associates in, and it will happen in a concentrated time frame, but everybody's going to get their own time frame. That gives them this sense of participation. They will see it in the results of what the profile says and how we present it to the board and publicly. And then we will work with you on your website or our search website on how you provide updates, timelines, and those kinds of things to the community. And then lastly, when we get down to the finalists, assuming you want public engagement in that, we have a very structured process that will bring them together by groups and probably have a town hall opportunity as well. We'll facilitate all that. But we will continue to show them how this board wants participation, where it is, what it is, how it works, and more importantly, how it has influence. That's the biggest part. So I don't know if I completely answered the question, but it's structured in the process that we are huge advocates of. You can tell us you want to do it differently. We're happy to do it differently. We're advocates because of some of the common beliefs you have and we have about the community and community engagement, and because we've been blessed to have so many opportunities to do this all across the country in districts just like yours, and a lot of them larger and some smaller.
Yep. Mr. Alexander?
I'm sorry. You mentioned also that you, when you have the candidates, they get 3 questions, and you give them 90 seconds to answer those questions. Are those how do you come about developing those questions, or are they standardized questions that you have for?
At least 2 are standardized. If you want a special question, don't have to answer 4. Okay? We typically do it, but we adjust them slightly based on the nature of the district. We wouldn't ask them how they would deal with, you know, how do you engage people with the challenges of a rural environment? You know what I mean? The engagement in strategic planning is a common question, for example. But the structure of the question is built upon the nature of where you are and who you are. But they're typically structured. We review them every summer and actually change them when necessary. But they will cover, you know, items that are important to you. We have a list of about 8 and we pull 3. It depends on the nature of the district. Thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Autry.
Thank you. So you also, I think, mentioned about having the largest pool of candidates. What are your thoughts about this particular time frame for a superintendent search?
It's challenging. It is what it is. One of the things you'll learn about us is that we're very transparent. It can be done. I want to be clear about the pool. So we have this engagement with candidates across the country regularly. They get newsletters, we send them other things. That's also the initial list we send about opening. But we're not just circulating our people. So I want to be really clear. 65% of the people we place don't come out of that pool. They enter that pool because they got placed. But they don't come out of that pool because of advertising, because of our associate contacts, and because, in all honesty, when you have a website that gets that kind of traffic, they come constantly to see what's there. So the pool of candidates is important because it gives us a place to start, but it's by no means the end all. The challenging is the timing, no doubt. I mean, we've done it before, where you probably won't be the only one we do somewhere in the country that has exactly the same time frame. So can we bring you quality candidates? Yes. If you ask me about suggestions for timeframes, I could give you suggestions for timeframes. But I'm not here to invade your decision of what you feel you need at what time. I'm here to show you what the options are and what most likely are the potentials of that. So I'm not trying to avoid your question, but I don't want. If you felt comfortable, the pool gets better if we do all this stuff this summer, you know, and so forth. And in the fall, we do the actual candidate solicitation. But can we do it now? We can do it now better than anybody we're talking to. And I don't say that arrogantly. It's the advantage we have of age, size, and strength. And Ohio.
And
Please go.
because I was in Chicago Public Schools for so long, much bigger district, you know, 300,000 students, 600 schools, there is a large pool of leaders that I can tap into. A city like Akron will be very attractive. Some of the other smaller districts, not so much, but this is going to be an attractive district. Just amongst the people who I've supervised, 6 people within the last 3 years have become superintendents across the country. And so that I do have that, and that'll be important, especially at a search that's happening, you know, now. You'll definitely need to expand, you know, and tap into contacts.
And that's the value of the associates. Exactly right there. The other side is I believe Akron needs to have candidates that have those kinds of experiences in different places. Because this isn't a place where you're just going to circulate some others that are trying to climb a ladder in this region or in the state of Ohio. You can have those, but I think our job is to give you choices. To put it bluntly, our real job is to make your job hard. If you have a real challenge at the end of the day about who to pick, we did our job. But your question is very appropriate. We can do either. If you want to talk about the circumstances and you want me to put some things on scale for you, I can. I don't know if you want me to do that now.
Okay. Other questions? So I guess the question I was going to ask, so when you're doing the searches, how often are you filling the role with someone from outside the state? Because you are a national firm, and so I'm just curious as to, you know, just off the top of your head, are you filling it from from inside the state most of the time or from outside the state most of the time? Or is it more 50-50, or, I mean, just,
It also depends on the states.
yeah, sure, yeah.
You've got a little different pool here because you've got more urban environments. I'm talking about your environment. So there are more urban places here. You know, you take me to Nebraska, they get a little thin. You know, no disrespect to Nebraska. So some of that plays a factor. I would say in states like here, you have a better, probably 60-40, 55-45, could be in state. The minute you get further out in places that don't have similar environments, then you're in the 60% outside state.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
I would say in this case at this time, it's at least 50, it might be 60-40 outside just because of timing.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Other questions? Mr. Alexander, do you have any more questions? All right. Ms. Autry? Ms. McKittrick? Okay.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Did you want anything in closing?
If you don't mind.
Please.
You first.
I would just thank you first for the opportunity just to present our proposal. This is certainly the most important decision that a board makes is the selection of a superintendent. I am confident based on my experience, but also with my relationship with Mike and his team, that we can certainly serve your needs and make sure you have a strong leader ready to lead the district. I'd also add that what I appreciate about my Ray experience is that I've maintained contact and support from Ray and Associates in my position as superintendent, especially during that very critical first year as well. I know that this board embraces and values equity and a commitment to students and a student-centered approach, and that is certainly the philosophy of our organization as well.
Okay.
That's why Liz goes first. It means I'm a lot shorter and she's much more poignant. In all candor, in addition to the thank yous, this one means a lot to us. The other thing I will add is we start this one, Columbus will close. So, because we are doing that. So I just wanted to relay, just erase all questions of conflict or challenges. Your timings are different.
Gotcha.
But more importantly is, this is what we do. It means a lot more to me because it's Ohio. But the fact of the matter is, it's districts of this size, it's districts of this makeup, and districts larger. And the other side is, and we bring you not only associates that have a familiarity of this environment, we also obviously have candidates that have a familiarity of this environment. And even more importantly, I think we have an opportunity to pay real attention to you. In other words, I'm here, Liz is here, and we know the environment really well. I could walk you around the legislature in places that you don't want to go, but I could walk you around there with no problem whatsoever. I still have a tremendous relationship with the Department of Education. But more importantly, we're here to serve you and to serve your children. Liz hit it on the head. We're really here to find the best leaders for children, in all due respects to all the adults. But we also have a tendency to find leaders that will build a real culture, that will take what you have, but take another step. Not try to change what's good. And I kind of got a laundry list of what are some of your highlights. I got a laundry list of some of your challenges. But also we'll have an opportunity to address the challenges you have, but in a fashion that builds a culture of recognition, collaboration, transparency, because that's who we will look for as we look for your candidates. And lastly, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, having sat where you sat for all those years, I thank you for what you do every day. You know, it's a tough seat. She's got a real hard seat as a superintendent, but you got a real hard seat. And I know the seat real well. So I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. The only thing that'll give you humor is that when I moved from the city school board to the state school board after about 6 months, and I came back from the grocery store one day, my lovely wife said, you know, Mike, since you're on the state board, that grocery store trip's a lot shorter. And I think we all understand what that means. So thank you again for the opportunity. We feel privileged. And most of all, we wish you the best of luck, and we hope that we could be part of that.
Roger that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
thank you for your help with the slides.
So it should be noted to those who are watching us live stream or here in the audience that we received these proposals over a week ago as a board. So we've had plenty of time to review prior to tonight's meeting as well. So, so next up we have HYA Associates. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We're all set for HYA Associates.
Yeah, Mr. Perry and members of the board, I'm Bill Adams. Thank you for the opportunity to join you virtually tonight. I'm going to ask Mr. McCormick and then Terry to just very, very briefly introduce yourself, and then I'll just give a little overview, and then we'll move into our presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed McCormick. I've been with HYA now for 7 years, so as an associate. And just very briefly, my background is from corporate, through financial avenues. I work with large corporations, and I've been on the school board here in New York for some 37 consecutive years. Some would say that I'm a glutton for punishment, but I think it's been a good reason, good cause, and it's an opportunity to help with the common good. There is just as a matter of educational background, is the fact that I've been on the board. I've been served as New York State School Board's president for 2 years. I've served on the National School Board's Board of Directors. I've served as president of the National Black Caucus of School Board Members, the Education Conference Board in New York, and a number of other regional positions in the education community. There is as I said, my job for pay was with a large corporation through the financial circles. It is a pleasure to be here with you this evening, and I look forward to the ensuing questions and certainly an opportunity to work with you in the future.
Thank you, Ed. Mr. Breeden.
Good evening. I'm so glad to be with you. I've lived in Ohio for 26 years, and 21 of those years was in Westerville, Ohio. So that seems to be a little bit of a town that several people that you'll see tonight are from. I'm a proud graduate of Westerville High School. And then I headed up north of you, and I was the assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction in Shaker Heights. I retired about 2 years ago as the interim chief academic officer in Columbus schools. And during that time, I had the opportunity to collaborate with many of your leaders because we had a monthly meeting where we shared best practices. And I've been very impressed with the work that you've done in Akron. And I have to say, I stole several ideas from the Akron school system, especially around summer programming and things like that. Previous to that, I was in Virginia, where I was in Fairfax County, where I was the assistant superintendent of accountability and professional learning. And I really spent a lot of my time in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was a teacher, an assistant principal, and a principal. And I'm very excited to be here tonight and get back to some of my Ohio roots.
Thank you, Terry. I'm Bill Adams, Vice President for Hazard Young and Attia, HYA. I've been involved with the company since 2014, started in the executive search business in 2006. I did serve as a superintendent of schools for 36 years, and what might be a little bit unique, it was in the same district for 36 years. So I understand a little bit about governance and leadership and the need for the partnership that exists between the Board of Education and the superintendent. We're going to share with you the 4 phases of the search process and then talk about a few things that we believe sets HYA apart. I would like to just, though, begin by saying in terms of some recent searches, we've been in, certainly did a recent search in Upper Arlington. I personally was involved in the Ohio State Superintendent of Instruction search and led that search. We've also done the Orange School District. When it comes to large urban districts, we have recently done, in fact, Ed and I worked on Syracuse, New York together. I worked on Paterson, New Jersey, Anne Arundel County, Maryland, a district of 85,000 students. And the firm also recently did Los Angeles, the second largest school district in the country. So with that, I'd like to begin by just sharing the 4 stages of the process that we believe is important as we work with the board and the community for the successor superintendent search. Really, it begins with engagement, that engagement phase with stakeholders, the out front part of the search that helps us actually get that fit for the right fit. There's some great leaders out there that may be the wrong leaders for your community. So it's about matching up and getting the right fit. 94% of all of the superintendents that we have been responsible, not for placing, but bringing to boards for their selection over the last 10 years, finished that initial contract, whether it be a 3, 4, or 5-year contract. And we think that's important as we look at that. But in the engage phase, we'd like to, first of all, begin with interviews of each of you. And then from there, provide stakeholder input between public forums, interviewing certainly your cabinet, your collective bargaining units, bringing that information back to you within that first 3-week period in a leadership profile report that we'd share with an executive copy for public consumption to keep the community involved in what we believe needs to be a very, very transparent process. That's part of that initial engagement piece. We would also, during that time, we have a research-based survey that we offer that's in our proposal, and we would use that for stakeholder input. We strongly recommend, as we look and get input internally from staff, obviously, is to reach out into the community, the business community. We saw, a representative earlier before you started the meeting when you talk about the chamber and other representatives from the business sector, all being important as you look at that direction, that leader for the educational programs for the children and students served through the school district. At the initial planning meeting, and we like to have a planning meeting within 10 days of being selected, as we can pull you together. And today we'll often supplement what we do in person through virtual meetings, especially if it works at the convenience to get the board together, because we believe you all need to be involved in this. And it is a collective decision. Once we have that planning meeting, and at the planning meeting, we talk about the advertising packages. We made some suggestions in our proposal, but we'd like to talk about those options, talk about the extensive third-party background investigation on the final candidate. And those things would all happen within that first meeting, within the first couple of weeks, then about 3 weeks for stakeholder intake. And then from there, we begin the recruitment process. And Ed, I'm going to defer to you for a minute on the recruitment process, then I'll jump back in. Terry, please jump in as well.
Yes, the recruitment process is after the LPR is done and the characteristics that you are looking for, we start to recruit against that document. That includes advertising in national periodicals and moving through all of our network of contacts. You can imagine if we've done some 1,600 searches that we have a natural contact list. We also, because of our past experiences, we have a tremendous opportunity to contact various people to to find individuals who fit the criteria that you're looking for, fit in terms of skills and experiences. Sometimes people misunderstand the word fit, and I always like to think make sure you understand we're talking about skills and experiences as it relates to your wishes for your community. So there's so that recruitment process we would go through, and if they were in hypothetical numbers, let me make up some numbers based on some averages. Wouldn't be a bean counter if I could make up a few numbers for you. Typically, we have about 40 applications, let's say. 20 of those would go through a paper search, and we would get it down to 220 that we think have enough of the criteria to consider to go through our consideration through our vetting. We would interview all of those folks and then eventually come to you with a slate of candidates that we believe are highly qualified, and chances are, and some would ask, what do you do specifically to ensure that there's diversity in the slate? You just have to be honest and open and make sure that everyone understands that it is an open process, and you get the information to all of the places it needs to be. I've never had a slate to come forward that didn't have diversity in terms of gender and race, demographically, skills. But that's the reputation that we have, and people feel very comfortable coming through our process when they're seeking new positions. There was and lastly, as you go through that, we would present those candidates to you based on that criteria and help you through the first phases of the interviews in terms of support with questions. But it is significantly important that we try to do the matching, do the soft background checks as we move through the process to make sure that the people are not only highly qualified, but they have high character before you are able to interview them through the first interview process. Yep.
Thank you. Terry, I'm bringing you that.
The only thing I thought I might add is that I've been a candidate, and I've always appreciated the way that HYA treated me and was honest with me. If I was interested in a district that was a bad fit for me, they told me. If they thought there was a district that I might not initially have thought about, they would recruit me to that. Matter of fact, they recruited me to go to Shaker Heights as the assistant superintendent, and it was a great time up there. The job that they selected and recruited me for really fit my skill set.
Thank you. Ed, I'd just add, when you were talking about diversity and actually of our 130 associates, about 43% are women and persons of color. But I think it's also important to note that members of our associate teams are officers in both the National Alliance of Black School Educators and ALAS, the Association of Latino School Administrators. And if you, as a board, look into our proposal, one of the suggestions we made in terms of advertising for recruitment purposes was to use both of those organizations, which we've recommended in that package 2 in the proposal. So I think that's important. One of the other things we should mention about the recruitment process, usually we like about 45 days from the time you approve the leadership profile and desired characteristics. So if you're looking at timeline, and we do have a timeline in the proposal, and certainly at the planning meeting we discussed that. But as you look at that and consider, okay, meeting within 10 days, planning meeting, 3 weeks later completing the stakeholder input, about 30 to 45 days is optimum. 30 is great. 45 is optimum. Ed, could you close your mic? I think we're getting an input. So that becomes important. Let's jump next to the selection phase. When we present, and one of the questions today is the market it's a tough marketplace. COVID changed the whole marketplace. It drove a lot of people out. A lot of things happened as a result of COVID, and frankly, the political divide that has just created a lot of challenges for school districts, school boards, school leadership teams. So what we like to do is we come into the selection process and Ed gave you some figures which were actually modest. We've been depending on the state, and it depends on notification information. And Ohio is a little unique in that request for applications can be made by the public. So it's not as difficult as Florida or Minnesota, which when a candidate presses a button, it becomes public information. But that will have an impact, as will if we were selected. When we would talk to you and have a conversation during the planning meeting, talk to you about the level of confidentiality and what some of those options are. And there are actually 4 basic options you can follow. But as you look at a potential slate, roughly a third of the candidates would probably meet some of the criterion. And then based on that criterion, we would provide you with 5 documents. One is a self-introduction. How would you want Bill Adams or Terry Breeden or Ed McCormick to introduce you to the Akron School District Board in third person? The second would be the letter of interest based on your desired characteristics. The third, the resume. The fourth, their completed application on Frontline. And then a 5th document, what references said. That's not that third-party background check, but it's a summary of what references said. You'd have each of those for the slated candidates. We also recognize today more and more boards want to see all of the applications. So we will provide all of those applications to you. Generally, we try to do this about 48 hours before the meeting, where you would look at a slate and so-called paper screen. It's a digital screen today. And then select the candidates that you would want to begin first round of interviews. And then we go through a whole process on that selection process. Anyone, Ed or Terry, want to add anything on recruitment at this point? Because I'm a little mindful of time. All right, selection. So the next phase is selection. It's important to note that as part of our process, one of us will be with you during the interview process. First of all, we will meet, help you, and we have a bank of about a 17-page document with a bank of potential questions, but we'll help you customize, we'll help you identify questions based on the leadership profile from what stakeholders told us. And then we'll also develop a script. You'll have a script on each candidate, and then work through that first round of interviews, and then into a second round of interviews. First round of interviews, generally about an hour each, and we'll assist you with that. We recommend that it be done in a full day. We're available if you're willing to work on a Saturday and take an all day for that rather than multiple nights when it's hard to compare and all of you have certainly other obligations, although giving up a Saturday we realize could be a challenge, or a Sunday. The second round of interviews, generally a smaller group, usually 2-hour interviews where the candidate would have to do a presentation as well as a number of activities. We talk to you and share all of that information at that planning meeting, and some of that information is in the HYA search brochure that we provided with our proposal. So that's the selection process. Transition, we'll have a transition meeting where at the transition meeting, we'd work with you to take all of those stakeholder input to help set the goals with the next superintendent for the next first year or two in the program. Anything that either one of you want to add about either the transition process? We too offer a guarantee. Our guarantee is during the first 2 years, unless, and we know there are a number of you up for election, unless more than half the board does change during the first year of the contract. Also, we do not come back and recruit when the superintendent's hired. Some boards will say poach. We don't do that. Just from an ethical standpoint, that's part of our guarantee. And from here, I would like to, I guess, just say that we've had probably only have to go back within 37-year period, I think 7 times to do a search. So we've been highly successful there. So with that, I think unless Ed or Terry want to give any concluding statements, I want to leave a little bit of time for the board to ask us questions. Okay.
All right. Are there questions from board members? Mr. Alexander.
You guys stated that you have a research tool that you use. How did you develop that tool? Is it a standard tool, or is it something you develop, or you cut it to fit the cloth per se?
Great question. Actually, our sister company, the Akron Group, is an analytics education firm. Utilizing that firm, they did a whole, well, first of all, there was a research paper that they used, what makes a successful superintendent, that was developed out of Northwestern University. From there, they went and took the former ISLIC standards, which were used for the national, developing the national standards for educational leadership, and then matched that with a current document that's used by the National Board for Educational Leadership. The organizations involved in that were AASA, the American Association of School Administrators, the state school, the Chief State School Officers Organization, National School Boards. So using those, they matched that data and developed a process where it's twofold. First part of the process actually uses a SCOT analysis, or the so-called SWOT analysis of looking at the community's perception of the district's and stakeholder perception of the district's strengths, weaknesses or challenges, opportunities and threats. And then the second part of it deals with the leadership style. And there's 10 characteristics. They're all important. And the documents used to help narrow those characteristics. And then we cross-reference those with what we get from the stakeholder input. Our proposal calls for 32, up to 32 sessions with that stakeholder input. The document then has been matched against communities with similar demographics to see what stakeholders say there. It allows for an item analysis of responses to the questions, and that item analysis can be disaggregated to up to 6 holder groups identified by you, the board, and we would help give some options for that, but ultimately that would be your choice. Does that answer the question on the genesis of the document or basis?
Yes, and I have a second part to this question too. Well, not to this question, but another one. Which you guys' interaction with our board, would it be virtual, or would it be, what percentage would be virtual and what percentage would be in person? Because I know you guys are from out of state.
That would be up to you. We've budgeted for all in person if needed. We recommend a combination. Often the planning meeting is much more effective just doing a virtual meeting, but that would be up to you if you want in person. What would happen if it was a virtual meeting, likely it would be all 3 of us participating. If it's an in-person meeting, it likely would be one of the 3 of us.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions from board members at the moment. So we definitely want to thank you for your time today. And, we'll be making a decision here soon about which direction we're going to go. So, so thank you again for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate you allowing us to do this virtually tonight, and certainly wish you all the best, whomever you select, with this critical decision. And certainly, it's often said to be the most important decision that a Board of Ed or a school board makes.
Roger that. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Take
Good
care.
night.
Okay, so next we'll proceed to the third and final. That's ESC NEO, and then we're going to pivot to our LTOP discussion.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, greetings. Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
How about that? We did it.
You're up and live now. You got the clicker here if you want it. Use it. You use the arrows to advance or the clicker.
Okay.
What you got here is up on the screen.
Perfect. Thanks very much. All right. Okay. Anytime? Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Russ Bennett. I'm one of the folks that work at the ESC of Western Reserve and have had a lot of interaction here with Akron Public since you aligned with us a number of years ago. Actually, myself and get an opportunity with a lot of other folks. A little bit of my background, and then I'll turn it over to Ed to tell him a little bit about himself. I'm a recovered superintendent. I was a superintendent for 10 years in Aurora schools. Now been at the ESC as Director of Leadership Services for the past 8 years now. And actually, Ed and I, we've teamed up on all kinds of searches. So you're getting a seasoned group of folks here tonight. So Ed, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself.
I retired. I was superintendent of North Royalton City Schools. Prior to that, I did in Medina and Twinsburg. Most of my career I was in Twinsburg. So some county experience at that point. Actually, we retired at the same time when they changed the retirement rules. I think I would have been good at retirement, but my wife didn't agree, so I went back to work. I actually am the principal of a Catholic school now, which is my parish, and so I get a taste of both worlds. I was a product of a search process that like we do, and so I was impressed with that. If I retired, that's what I wanted to do. So I get to do the best of both worlds.
So a little bit about the search team. What you only have two folks here tonight, but Ed and I both are going to be the main key focal people if we're fortunate enough to earn your business. We have Bob Mendrink, who's our superintendent, is also there, going to work with us throughout this process. Jen Dodd, our assistant superintendent. But we have folks all over the state. Again, superintendents, former superintendents. We can probably say we know almost all the superintendents in the state from one way or another if we see them, as we did today at the ESC with Bass's regional meeting. So we have our network is pretty wide and large. Just a little bit about us. If you don't know what the Educational Service Center is, we're the largest one in Ohio. Obviously, $150 million budget is very healthy. We have 47 member school districts that align with us. Again, part of my role as a Director of Leadership Services, I'm one of the folks that go out to all of the school districts, interface with the superintendents, many times school boards, doing board retreats, principals, do a lot of the leadership stuff, strategic planning. So I'm pretty embedded within our districts. But that's not all we reach. There might be 47 aligned with us, but we work throughout the whole entire state. And again, our reach is urban, large suburban, small suburbs, big, small schools. But what you get with us is the local responsiveness and the communication. We live here, we're close here to be able to help you through this process. Again, you see our network is large. And we interact with all the other ESCs throughout the state, which is also a huge piece for us to be able to network and to recruit, because we do actively recruit. So a lot of experience that you have at your disposal here. I'm going to turn it over to Ed to talk a little bit about the search process, but I do want to kind of focus you a little bit on the binder that we have here, the presentation we have here, if you want to take any notes or write some questions. But I want you, as you walk away, you're going to wonder what the ESC's search looks like. This little cheat sheet will probably help give you a little bit of a synopsis. So it's going to take some time to talk through the process, and I'll be back in a minute or two.
Well, this is obviously an important decision that you're about to make. One might argue the two most important decisions you make as a Board of Education are the hiring of your superintendent and the hiring of your treasurer. What's different about, I think you have a chance when you make a decision, you have multiple search firms. There's lots of folks that do what we do. What I think separates us and makes us a little bit different, and if what you're looking for is the engagement of your community and the many stakeholders that make up the Akron City Schools entire school community, that's a hallmark to what we do. We believe we're an engagement group. We want to engage your school community, one, because we think the schools belong to the community. Second of all, we know that the success of your next superintendent can begin with a successful search process. So if you've engaged your school community effectively, you started the situation off in a good spot, and we're very different there. So you'll see a lot of engagement as part of the process that we're going to share. It's also a partnership. We believe that we work together, and you're going to see in the next slide that I show you what is different. We believe in relationships. We're going to develop a relationship with the Board of Education, a relationship with your potential candidates from throughout this area and throughout the state of Ohio and beyond. It's about relationships, but what's really important is a partnership, and I would tell you we could refer you to countless districts that we've worked with, and I think what they would say is, you have us as a partner in the process. It's not like we do something and you do it, you don't hire us, and we do it together, because ultimately that is what it really is. And it's a partnership that won't end when you select your next superintendent. We keep up with the folks that end up becoming superintendents in the districts, and we stay up with the Board of Education, and we'll explain a little bit about that. We will guide and facilitate the process. You're busy folks, so we're here to handle all of that stuff for you and to be with you. I know some search firms don't do that. We will be with you while you're interviewing, not to do the interviewing, but to help you to process the interviews, to also help you go through what you're doing, the questions and all of that, to help guide you. It's your process, but we're going to help facilitate it, as well as the candidates coming and going, keeping you on schedule, doing all of those things, because you've got a lot to do, and that's what we feel our job is to be with you and to help you process all that you're going through. We will also make sure that all candidates align with the locally developed profile and the Ohio Superintendent Standards. That's a big, I know which one you're doing. This one, if I was to say, if you were connecting with our search firm, this is really what we're all about. It looks pretty basic, but it really starts with relationships in the middle. We have relationships with superintendents, as Russ said, throughout the state of Ohio. We know folks, if we don't know who they are, we know people who know them very well, and that's advantageous in the recruiting process. Quite honestly, folks don't always just apply. If they're busy doing a good job, you need to actively recruit them, and you got to make sure that you're recruiting the right people. So we establish relationships with potential candidates that you might have. We'll create a relationship with you, and again, what makes it different, we will create a relationship with the school community. We will do, as part of it, in the beginning, once we announce the opening, we will engage the community. We would recommend to you that there be a series of focus groups, not just surveys. We can do surveys, but we do focus groups face-to-face with your community, with as many groups as you want us to have, from teachers and classified staff to parents to business leaders, civic leaders, political leaders, to really look at what you're looking for so that we can build a profile of your next superintendent. The truth is, we should know who that is yet. We don't know what the fit is until we know once that profile is built. So it's not just about finding the best superintendent, it's finding the best superintendent for the Akron schools. That's what we have to do. And that gets developed, we believe, as part of an engagement process. So we get into the recruitment process. When you have the interviews, as I said, we will be with you for those interviews to help you process those interviews, because you don't do this all the time, but we do. So we can help you with that. Not
not to run them for you, but to help keep you on that process. We'll do due diligence. That is doing all the background work to make sure that you know the candidates that you're getting and what you know what the history is and why we would recommend them to you. What we will have before you even get to that interview process when we recruit, we will have vetted the candidates. You will not get anybody that we recommend to you that we have not ourselves personally interviewed. Okay, so we would have interviewed them before they came to you. We will be very open and transparent with you. Here are all the folks who applied. Here are the folks that we interviewed, and here are the people that we believe fits the profile of your next superintendent. And from that, ultimately, you get to decide, are those candidates? Generally, most folks, if we did a good job with building the profile, we did the focus groups, we did the surveys, we put that together, we bring you good candidates, and we start, usually it's 6, could be 5, could be 7. A lot of that has to do with the pool. We also believe that in the end of the process, and ultimately it's your process, but we recommend you bring the stakeholders back in for the last part of the process. Now, what's different in the way that we do the search process is we want the stakeholders together in the same rooms. Sometimes folks use stakeholders, and I think some folks have copied our search process a little bit, but they may have people go and talk to the teachers, then they talk to the political leaders, then they talk to the business leaders. We think your school community is one, and so they're all together as part of that, and we'll help guide that. Again, as a board, you get a chance to listen, to hear how these potential candidates, your 2 final candidates, could be 3, usually it's 2, how they interact with your potential, with your school community. And you get to witness that, and then you have one final interview with them. And that can help guide your final interview questions for your final candidates. This is part of it. This just hits it in a nutshell. There's the engagement phase, the search phase, the interview phase, which, again, I said that we screen, we interview stakeholders, the first and second rounds that you have. Our due diligence and then the board due diligence will help guide you to do some further due diligence to make sure that you can do some things beyond just what would be normal. We'll even help you with the contract negotiations. What we take pride in is prior to those final 2 candidates, they clearly know where you're at and what the range is that the board is looking for, and we've looked at all aspects of the contract. Sometimes in the search process, you wait until you pick your candidate and then you start negotiating, and then unfortunately I think your candidate has absolutely they have all the cards on in their hand at that point. We like to have that done ahead of time with the 2 final candidates to say, if you're the selected candidate, here's the range you'll be within that with that salary. It may be a different number for the 2 folks that you have. We believe strongly in that as well. In the transition phase, we said we stay with them. We'll do a retreat with the Board of Education and your new superintendent, your leadership team, to talk about how you're going to work together. That's very important. We think that's vital. We used to have that as something that we offered. Now we say it's part of the search process, and we believe that strongly in it. Because there isn't a right or wrong there. It's just how are we going to communicate together? What happens when this goes on? What's the board going to do? What's the superintendent's job? To make sure you're clear and aligned about whose job is whose job and how are you going to communicate and work together.
I'm just going to do a little quicker dive into some more specific pieces. This development of a profile is really, really important. And we like to say, again, like Ed mentioned, we can do online, but we like the face-to-face. We get a lot more out of face-to-face meetings with our focus groups. And this really is the opportunity when we pull all this information together. We'll do a presentation to you about, again, what are the questions we asked? What is everybody saying? Many times very similar to what you're looking for, but I think it's a great idea to make sure that you engage your community so that we can go out and we will actually recruit people to fit this profile. That's a huge difference. We're not just trying to gather people to bring to you. We're trying to gather people that actually fit your profile. Again, I'm going to go back to this. The key part about us helping with the negotiations piece is that the final night of the interview, when you interview the final 2 candidates, or 3, whatever it might be, and you offer the job, we want to make sure that we can guarantee your candidate is going to say yes. So sometimes people say, well, why are you negotiating this again? we want to make sure we kind of take you out of line of fire. We do a lot of the background work on things. For example, if there's a candidate that you're not interested in moving on, we take care of those phone calls, that interaction with these folks. Same thing on the contract negotiations. If we know something's not going to be in the package, we'll tell that candidate so they might be able to pull out so that you never have to get into that tough negotiations and maybe separate at the end when that was your candidate. So again, we'll make sure that we are covering all the bases throughout the entire time. Oops. Communication is really huge. In this search, Ed and I were pretty much twins in this event. I'll be the main lead if we're able to get the position. So I'll work with somebody on the board, whoever that might be, for the phone calls that we have. Now, we say it'll be at least weekly. I think our last search that we did, I think we probably had multiple conversations daily. Not saying that that's all what everybody wants to do, but this is so important that we want to make sure that we get it right. So the communication is going to be very key and critical. So I just want to make sure that's a key piece that we'll have. And we're local, so we could stop up here. I stop on my way home as I drive down to the Canton area, and I drive past in the morning up in Independence, so I can stop here at any time to have conversations.
The recruiting process, I think, when you take a look at what we do, I want to make sure I hit the right one here. Is that the right one? Networking, we are networked, and we all know in 2023, networks take on a whole different realm, and some of it's electronically. It's still face-to-face and knowing who people are, but we also know that it's much bigger than us. So we not only have the ESC of Northeast Ohio website, we have personal networks, the Ohio Human Capital Resource Center. We work with the Ohio Alliance of Black School Administrators, American Association of School Administrators, BASA, which is a Buckeye Association of School Administrators, the Ohio Minority Recruitment Consortium, and we do that through LinkedIn as well, Ohio Human Capital Resource Center we mentioned already, and then Education Week. As much as you want to recruit, we have that. But we're networked with these folks that happens regularly anyway, that it's folks that we're working with as far as networking. And what that helps is it's not just resumes that someone's sending. We know the story behind the candidates that we would want to bring to you because we think that's really important. I think we mentioned already the vetting. We think that's very important. There's nothing worse than as busy as you are to sit through a poor interview. We think we eliminate or reduce the odds of that happening because we vetted them appropriately for the Board of Education. We said that we'll vet all candidates. I shared that piece and the due diligence I think I explained as we went around. The transition year we mentioned, and actually we've even gone well beyond a year. If this just does not work for whatever reason and this did not happen, we would do the search over again. Now, that doesn't have to happen. I've not been on a search that we've had to do that. But if it meant that it didn't go well, then we would come back and do it again for free. So that also fits with where you are on the timeline. If you get to the candidates and we're saying, boy, this pool isn't what we wanted it to be, we'll keep going. So it may mean that if you say, the pool isn't good right now in the spring, at the end of the year, then we could leave it open. It's not like you have to start all over again that you hired us. We're going to stay with you until you select your superintendent. And we are tied with you to the point we don't want to recommend substandard candidates too, just to get the process completed. If you think we don't have the right candidate, then we'll keep the search going and we'll delay. We'll take a look at other possibilities at that point. That's the guarantee that we talked about. So,
and I think the key part here is this becomes personal to us. Akron is personal to us at the ESC. The people that we help place in positions are personal to us. I think everybody that I've helped in the search process, I follow up every year, phone calls, meet with them. It becomes our reputation as well. So we want to make sure that we do a great job for you. So again, it's all about leadership. It's all about finding the right leader for Akron. We would love to have your business. We'd love to be able to support you. We'd love to be able to follow you along the process. I think the one slide there about the retreats is something that also sets us apart. We can do a deeper transition plan, which is more in-depth, which has more retreats. But we find the opportunity to get with the new team, and even depending on how the treasurer piece works for you, having a team together that you can build cohesively is the most advantageous you can have to have a successful school district. So with that, we'll take questions. I think we're pretty well on time.
Mr. Alexander.
Do you guys have a research tool that you use? If so, can you briefly explain it? A research tool that you use, can you briefly explain it, if you have one?
Well, we don't do the perceiver. If you're doing that in the interview process, if you're looking for that, which is typically interviews where there's trigger questions that if you hit the target, don't hit the target. From the research standpoint,
If you wanted, that is something that's available if you want to do it. We certainly do it, we could do it both ways. We have for some searches we've done, and there's a couple out there, would be what the board would appreciate, which one they would want to use. We still believe in, that's another tool, but we still want to interview folks ourselves more than just the research, because it's more than that. This is a personal business. It's a relationship business, and seeing people face to face and to do that. But by all means, it's a good point. If you want to add that to it, I wouldn't say instead of, it would be in addition to.
And the other part is too that we can certainly provide a Harrison assessment along with the final candidates if you wish to make sure that they are a match with you as well. So we can do those pieces as well.
Thank you.
Other questions? So the question I'd ask just in follow-up would be, so do you have concerns about finding a quality pool with our timeline?
I don't feel that that's going to be an issue. I believe this is going to be a job people will want, will apply. But again, at this stage, I see no issues why we can't do that. Again, I think we could follow the process. We would have to get started right away. If we were able to get the business, we would want to start as soon as possible, even next week, to make sure we get the posting out, that we would have a time to sit down with the board so that we can go through a checklist. And in that checklist talks about things of contract, what are your traits that you want in that superintendent. We would want to get started right away. We do have a sample timeline in the back of this. It's very aggressive. We would have to hit the pavement. Anybody would have to hit the pavement pretty quick.
What we're finding with other searches, to your point, and we just finished one, and there's another one getting rolling concurrently. Sometimes a tight timeline helps with the pool, and you may say, why? Well, because if you're in a sitting superintendent right now, the chance is your district isn't in limbo for that period of time. It's not as long as a full drawn-out process. So sometimes, at least the one we're doing in another district right now is finding better candidates than we did 5 years ago when they had a search process. So sometimes a tight timeline can yield positive candidates. But the point is, if we're not happy with the pool, we'll be honest with you about the pool. We'll say the timing might not be right. And that's what we say the relationships. I would keep coming back to this. We're not going anywhere. We're here. We're going to be around. You're going to see us at OSBA. We're going to be in the area. We're not too far away. If we don't believe in the people we're sending you, then we're going to say, let's hold on. Let's wait. We don't think that's going to be the case, but we got to be honest with you. It's a relationship. It's not just a job that we have a contract with you, and so we're going to give you the best of these names. If we don't believe strongly that you have the right people, we'll be honest with you.
We could certainly timeline and interviews and stuff like that. That's not a problem. It's getting out to be able to gather all the candidates. It's really where the time comes in that span.
And some of it's going to be your schedule too. So, getting the board together and committing that once we sit down with you to get dates on the schedule right now, because otherwise everyone gets busy. That allows us to tighten up the timeline and do that effectively. The problem is if we wait too long on that, one board member can't make it, another board member can't make it, and so that stretches out the process.
Other questions? I'll ask one last one. So you talked a lot about your impact and your presence in Ohio. Do you do much recruiting outside of Ohio for these positions?
Yeah, so K-12 Job Spot is really one of those that goes out of Ohio. We'll get some applications that are out of Ohio. So we have the network that we can do that with. Obviously through the ESC pieces, there's all connections. It may not be called ESCs, it may be called POSIs or things of that nature. So we have ways to be able to reach out beyond our
The truth is, though, to be totally transparent, Ohio's a unique place.
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult if you don't have some understanding of Ohio. So However, it could be someone that moved to Michigan, maybe that's a bad example, moved to another state and has some understanding of Ohio. But the way we're funded, a lot of things that are happening in Ohio, you want to have some understanding. So we will see candidates. We get candidates in every search from more than just Ohio. We have found, to be totally honest and transparent, some of the out-of-state candidates have some difficulty understanding the things that are unique to Ohio. And so we're just being honest and upfront with that I think it sounds good to say we drew this national pool, but that's good if that candidate also can really find their understanding of Ohio and they have some, their quick study on Ohio, because Ohio is unique, especially in the funding area.
And do they actually have a Ohio certificate?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Okay. Roger that. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
We appreciate the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Absolutely.
And there is my card with my contact number on it. Call me anytime you wish. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. All right, next we'll move to the LTOP planning presentation for this evening.
Not like I had to follow anything, right?
No.
Just so you know, I can do LTOP planning locally, across the country, however you like it done. Well, good evening, board members, Superintendent Outley. Appreciate the opportunity to come to this rare case where I can present on LTOP. But what I'm hoping is, at least based on what I think administratively that we are hearing, plans that we've talked about internally, the goal I hope tonight is to go over the two that I believe I understand are two of the plans that we are looking at most closely. Certainly can change. And then I tried to organize a slide to maybe help the decision making a little bit, or at least make it a little more clear, because I think it's pretty confusing at times. So if I'm off the mark, let me know, and I'll try to reset. And again, reminder to the community, again, I don't think we can say enough. This might appear abrupt to you, but this has been in the works for a very, very long time, going back, pushing almost 2 years now that work has been done on this plan. This is just an update. This comes from GPD, which is an architectural firm here in Akron, to give you a sense of if we were to move fairly quickly in a decision-making process, how long would it take before a new building, if a new building is a selection, before it would be ready? And it looks like, as long as we can continue to move, that it could be complete and ready for occupation in the spring of 2026. So this is referencing the proposed performing arts / Pfeiffer School on Kenmore's campus, is what this particular timeline is talking about. This is very rough, just a very rough overview, but to just give you a bit of a timeline to try and make these things fall together, as in May, hiring architects. Baker Tilly is the firm that I would recommend that would serve as our bond, or serve as putting together the COPS deal. It takes, from the moment you approve, it takes about 60 days to secure those funds, and there are multiple steps that are included in that process, but it takes about 60 days. And then construction there's a lot of things that take place on that previous slide. It kind of shows you a bit more of what those are. But to get construction started, I would recommend what the district has used previously, so this is not new to the school district, but construction manager at risk, which is a way to manage these projects. And then follow that up with a spring levy in 2024, and then be able to go out secure funds for the phase 2 of this project. If the board decides to go in phases, hire those architects, complete the Kenmore building in spring of 26, and then hopefully by the summer of 28, a North High School could open as well, if all this plan falls into place. So again, you've seen it before, but I just want to go through this. This assumes this plan is a phased plan, two steps, closures of Ott, Miller South, Firestone Park, Pfeiffer, Stewart, and Essex, phased in over some different time frames. Construct a new North High School. That's predicated on the funding stream of the 1.75 mil permanent improvement levy. Repurpose one existing elementary school. In this particular instance, it's Leggett. I would tell you that the one piece to consider as we talk about STEM high school, which is losing that space, but we have a year, we believe, secured for next year for a home for them. So depending on what choices you might make as it relates to STEM high school, there is still some time to look at other options potentially. Convert the National Inventors Hall of Fame Middle School to a high school, construct the new Kenmore building, and that would be relocating the Pfeiffer students, K-5, relocate the Performing Arts program, grades 4 through 8 in that facility. Again, should be ready to move into before the conclusion of the 2026 school year. We have already begun the process of moving those 6th graders to ECLC, open new preschools where possible, and in this particular option, it is to construct that athletic facility on the campus, but seek business partners and outside funding options to support it. So what does that mean? It means that $15 million that's sitting in that locally funded initiative or the 004 account would be applied to the construction of the new building and not applied in this plan to the construction of athletic facilities. So how that manifests itself or how that shows itself is in how things are funded. So construction, to include the demo, is $61 million. That is the demolition of the existing Kenmore High School and then replaced with a new facility. The athletic complex, in this case, does not require, or there's no funding being shown because it would be privately raised, or the attempt to privately raise it would be the initiative. The North Campus does not appear on funding here because, again, that would be seeking the 1.75 mil PI levy to fund that project. Then retrofits for Leggett at $2 million makes this a $63 million project. So how are we going to pay for it? $10 million comes from certificates of participation, $5 million from grants, $33 million from ESSER 3 or general fund, $15 million from the LFI. Again, the next plan will use the $15 million differently, and you'll see how that looks. That's your total funds of $63 million. So that, what does $10 million in COPS cost? It cost us $817,927 per year for 30 years, less the savings from the closure of buildings and deferred maintenance, keeps us net $1.4 million. So that's the budgetary impact of doing option 6. So what does, and then the second part of option 6 looks just like the same as option 7. It's an $80 million COPS deal to build that building. That's $1.5 million or $1.1 million almost, almost $2 million a year for 30 years to fund that. But there is a funding stream should the levy of 1.75 mils pass of $4.9 million. So it's only a hit to the general fund of $288,000. But remember, we have the $1.44 million from the previous slide from the reductions. So it's still a positive, the entire deal is still a positive impact on the general fund. So the next option looks similar, but the fund, it really lies in how the funds are used. So it closes the same buildings. Still calls for construction of a new North High School in phase 2. Still requires 1.75 mils in PI to be passed. It still repurposes an elementary school in this particular case, Leggett. Still converts middle school to high school, the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and it still constructs the same building. Still moves all the 6th graders. So what's different? It's primarily different here in on bullet number 8. Construct a new athletic complex on the former Kent campus, and notice there's no fundraising. So that's what looks different, is how those funds are used, which makes an impact on the total budget. So the reductions are the same, $2.2 million. The construction is still $61 million, no change there. But you'll see a dollar amount associated with the athletic complex. So the athletic complex construction would begin nearly simultaneously with the Kenmore build. The North Campus, there's no dollars to apply there. I think we understand that now. Still a $2 million budget for retrofits. It's now a $78 million project instead of a $63 million project. So the real difference, again, is we're taking those certificates of participation, which in the previous option were $10 million. They are now $25 million in a debt obligation. $5 million in grants. ESSER fund still stays the same, or general fund. The LFI funds, and equals your $78 million. Instead of $800,000 debt over the next 30 years, it's now a $1.6 million debt. It cuts into your savings from the deferred maintenance and closure of buildings. And then the last slide, phase 2, looks the same in both plans, if you're comfortable with that approach. What is extremely difficult, and I think everyone understands, is while we would like to do all of these buildings, we don't have the funds to do all of the buildings all at once. So that is why you guys make the incredible amount of money you make serving on a school board, so that you can make these.
Better qualify that. There are people who are watching this that they're actually going to believe you.
That's a complete joke. That's a complete joke.
So we do not want the public thinking that we make a lot of money. Just for the record, school board compensation is capped at $5,000 a year, so which is about $3,300 a year after taxes. So just make sure that. But thank you, Dr. Thomas. I get it. So.
All right. Next time I won't make jokes. Try not to be a funny guy.
No, you're good. You're good.
We've seen this before. We have a square footage challenge, but we have a square footage challenge in any elementary we would repurpose. So what I've tried to do here to help facilitate your decision making is you'll see everything is laid out here on this slide. It's also a handout for you. What's highlighted in yellow are the things that would change based on the plan that you choose. if you were to stick to these plans. You could, of course, alter this significantly from here. But what I think will help all of us, and certainly help me better facilitate for you all, is gaining an understanding of what is agreed upon and what isn't, and what other options would you want us to explore administratively if there are, and do we have enough in place, enough commonalities in place that we could begin moving forward on potentially large sections of this plan. And I'm not asking you to do this. I'm just trying to give you a document to help.
We need to do this.
Okay.
So it's part of the reason why we're meeting tonight, is to have this conversation,
Okay.
To move towards narrowing this down, and getting additional questions asked and answered. So, okay. Good. And you had one more slide.
Well, you've seen the next slide. That's just your numbers. I just added that in your packets.
Gotcha.
So you would have access to the numbers of students in each of the programs in Miller South, in STEM Middle, and just enrolled across all of those programs. So you have a sense that what we're projecting is based on what we're seeing in our classrooms.
Gotcha.
And then, and we've talked about this, the pros and the cons. So I those are important too. They vary by person, from person, to what your views actually are. But for the most part, moving our scholars into newer facilities is certainly helpful. We are definitely excited about equalizing the experience, and I won't try to talk about curriculum. We have our curriculum experts here, but I believe the administration feels strongly that the sixth graders having the same experience across the district is a positive thing. Placing an educational facility on the Kenmore campus. Some of the and STEM students would remain adjacent to the UA campus under the proposed programs or plans. I do think keeping our eye on House Bill 110 and what that means to us in terms of our facilities and our declining student enrollment has to be part of what's taken into consideration, and keeping our finances, the financial impact minimal to the extent that we can is important. Some of the cons of moving our students would be they're required to attend other schools, and so that is difficult. That's a difficult process. Change is not always embraced. And the plan still has the challenge of going to have to make some changes in the North Cluster in order to alleviate overcrowding. It will require additional busing, and we know that not addressing North High School immediately means that we're going to have to put some funds into the building that I wouldn't necessarily have recommended, but the reality is we can't do all these projects simultaneously.
Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, we may have asked this, and I don't remember. If we don't pass the levy, that means there's no North High School. And what is our plan after that to help get those students into a new school?
Without a funding stream to pay for $5.2 million a year for 30 years, I think would be paramount to financial suicide. We just simply don't have the funds to absorb that much debt. So if it were to fail, I think we'd have to try again. And I think what's important to note is improving, and the reason I would recommend a PI versus a bond issue, they have the same result to some extent, but a PI lets you distribute those funds not just to North High School, but across all of our CLCs. So the impact of a PI is more widespread than an impact of a specific bond issue. And a lot of our CLCs, although we don't think of it this way, you know, think of a home construction. What do you hit at about 20 years on a home construction? Think about 20, 25 years, what you start replacing. And we're starting to have buildings that are moving into those, getting close to those ages. So some of our other buildings are going to require general maintenance and repair as well. And a PI gives you more flexibility. And hopefully more widespread appeal. But to directly answer your question, if we can't pass PI money to fund this program, then we would have to use general fund money to continue to keep that building operational. Because we, at this point, unless you want to move into a very difficult decision about closure of high schools, then we've got to keep that building open.
Right. And so I guess my next part of the question would be, you don't build another north because we don't get the money, and the building starts falling apart.
Okay.
That's going to be very costly, probably, correct?
Correct.
So we'll end up paying more money in the end by not having a North High School than we would if we had a North High School.
Theoretically possible.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. While they're deliberating, I'll ask a few questions. So I love this slide. Thanks for doing that. So let me start by asking my board colleagues a question. Because I feel like as we've gone through these meetings, that what I've heard in our discussions is there's a consensus around moving forward with the construction of the building in Kenmore. That would be the new Pfeiffer and Miller South. That part of the plan, as it currently is constituted, is there a consensus around that? Do any of you have an objection or a concern to that, or is that a part of this plan that we can agree that we would like to move forward on? And I'm not asking for a formal vote tonight. I'm just asking, is there any, because again, I know that as I've tried to listen to all the questions and comments that we've had for the last 4 or 5 board meetings, and what I'm hearing is there's consensus around moving forward with the Miller South Pfeiffer plan. We may be discussing other pieces of the plans, but I feel like that piece, I feel like I've heard consensus around that. I just want to, as an open-ended question, is that what you all have been hearing, or do you have a different point of view on that? Because recall, we are here tonight to start to narrow this down and start to actually get closer and closer to making a decision. So again, that's where we're starting. I just want to start by asking my board colleagues that question. Ms. Autry.
So, yeah, speaking for me, I would say that yes, definitely want Kenmore to not be in a position to be an educational desert. To me, that's the easy thing to say. The hard thing is, how do we balance that out with our other priorities that we definitely have? We really need the Kenmore community support as well moving forward to support, the rest of the district. We understand the needs and wants there. I was there when all the different clusters seems like we were battling to stay alive. I was there when that happened. And unfortunately, when it came down to it, we had so many folks from the community in Kenmore that had left the district. I guess that made the decision at that time easier for the district to make. I wasn't on the board at that time, so I keep thinking about that. And absolutely, we don't want that community to fade away and die. But we also need folks to support and come back and help us support the entire district as well. And so I'm just trying to reconcile, all of those things. So to answer your question, President Hall, absolutely, yes. I feel like, I want them to have that support. I live in West Akron. I know what it looks like to have a Rankin sitting in the neighborhood, being vandalized and sitting empty. I know what that looks like, and I don't want that to happen for any other community. But again, keeping in mind the entire district is what I've been, contemplating over all of these meetings. So it's not an easy decision. It's easy when you're, focused on your own particular neighborhood and school, because I know, I was fighting my butt off for Buchtel back when these decisions were on the table at that time. And so now I'm here in a different seat with a lot more information and a lot more accountability for a lot more folks. So it is nothing at all against the community. I respect and appreciate and love what the Kenmore community is doing. So I just want to make the best decision for the district overall, because that's my responsibility as a board member.
Thanks, Ms. Autry. Ms. McKittrick, did you have any comments?
A question first.
Sure.
How likely do we think the support will be from donors or sponsors for that $15 million for an athletic complex, right? Do we think that money is going to be easy to get? Because that $15 million, whether it's in one plan as part of the overall plan or just for an athletic complex, that makes a difference, right? That's a hard call for me, because while I appreciate wanting that money to go into a school, I also understand that for some of our kids, athletics is where they shine, right? And so I don't want that to be taken away, that opportunity to be taken away from anybody either. That aside, regarding this decision and whatever decision ultimately this board agrees with, to continue Ms. Autry's thought, while I appreciate the few folks who are still here, this is a difficult decision, right? And we have people here from various groups, whether you're from Kenmore or you're the NIF STEM middle school parents or the high school parents or the Leggett families. And I appreciate your advocacy for those particular groups. But please remember that we are tasked with making a decision for all of those groups, right? And it's not, I spent a lot of time in Kenmore. My grandmother lived in Kenmore. I love Kenmore, right? But I can't advocate for just Kenmore. I have to advocate for what's best for the 20,000 children who are in this district, not only the ones in Kenmore. So having said all that, that's what I want people to keep in mind. And very often, when folks don't get their way, right, then I will never support another levy in Akron. Well, of course, that's your choice. But that doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt the people here. It hurts those kids that we're all trying to support. So please keep that in mind, too. That's all.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Kitcher. I appreciate it. So from my standpoint, just as we review the plans, I'm absolutely 1,000% in favor of moving forward with the Miller South School and Pfeiffer School in Kenmore. I think it's the right thing for Kenmore. I think it's the right thing for the district as well. I think, Ms. McKittrick, to your other comment, the Roswell County Athletic Complex, I think that's something that I wouldn't want to rely upon outside funding for that. I think that's something else that has to happen. I'm not saying it has to be $15 million, though. We could look at a more modest athletic complex there to start, and then the rest of it, we can look to raise money much like other schools in the city have done. So I would ask us to look at modifying that. So rather than say $15 million, look at something that was 4 to 8 in the $4 to $8 million range. Because I think it is hard to say we need to raise $15 million. I think when we put money in and saying, hey, our commitment is $6 million and we need to raise another, and we're going to start construction, and for $6 million, this is what you get. But we're going to leave room for these other components, and we can raise the money. Then we add those other components in. So for me, and I think part of this too is, we've got to, before we have to stop asking for things from parts of the community that feel like we've given them nothing. And even though it may not be factually accurate that we've never given them anything, in the last 15 years or so, I certainly understand the point of view when you have a community like Kenmore and like Firestone Park who feel like they really just haven't received what they felt they should have received properly, right? And so as we think about passing levies, I think to myself, well, a $7 million levy is essentially, $2.8 million per mil, per year. You're talking about essentially $20 million a year. And from that standpoint, if spending $4 to $8 million on an athletic complex in Firestone Park means that community is much more likely to be out supporting a levy that is going to bring in $20 million a year, that to me that's easy math, right? Like you do that, you do that deal, and I call it a deal purposefully because again, that's the deal, right? I mean, we have to have the support of Kenmore and Firestone Park in supporting levies, and so the expectation from my standpoint is, assuming that we put the new school in Kenmore and we put the athletic complex in Firestone Park, I will absolutely be talking to the city council people that are from Kenmore and from Firestone Park and saying, hey, we have done our part, and so now we need you to do yours. Help get your community out to support this levy, right? Because we can put a school like Miller South in Kenmore, but we don't pass a levy, then we can't afford to program it or keep the programming in it the way that we want to, right? So the construction piece is in some respects the easy part. The passage of the levies to keep those entities funded appropriately, programmed appropriately, moving forward. That's where we need the entire community. But these communities are tired of hearing us say, pass a levy and then we'll do this for you. They're tired of us saying that, and not us per se in this room, but this institution, right? And even if that may not be completely factually accurate, that is the perception that these communities are living under. And so nobody in this room is going to convince these communities that their perception is incorrect. Especially when you look at all the closed buildings in Kenmore, right, and soon to be more closed buildings in the Firestone Park area, right. You still have Roswell Kent that just kind of sits there as this open sore, on Wilbeth Road, right. I mean, so for me, I am going to fiercely advocate for moving forward with the construction in Kenmore and moving forward with a more moderate approach to Firestone Park. And if you look at the numbers, the finances, because this comes back to the numbers, you look at the finances, if you look at option 7, right, which actually assumes a full $15 million going into that sports complex, you're still looking at a positive impact of $594,000 a year, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. So make sure that I got that right.
So are you looking at option 6 or?
I'm at phase 1, option 7, excuse me.
Okay.
There was a $594,000 per year number. Yeah, there it is. Mm-hmm. So that's the positive, right? And that assumes $15 million going. So that assumes an increase from $10 to $25 million in COPS funding to put the sports complex in. If that 10 becomes 14 to 18. That 594 actually increases a little bit. So again, doing this option here, we're still adding to the budget annually by $594,000 a year, and that's doing the full 15, so. But again, from my standpoint, when I look at the options, I look at option 7 and I say this is where I'm at, right? With regard to the STEM piece, I think we have a little more time on the STEM piece.
We do.
As you just talked about. I think there are some other, for example, Akron Early College sits on campus. I was going to ask this question, but what do we pay Akron U to use the building to house Akron Early College, right? Because there may be other opportunities for us to do something similar with other schools, like the STEM high school, right? So that may not involve us spending $2 million to retrofit an existing building and keeps the kids on campus or near campus, right? So again, I know we don't have answers on that tonight, but I'm just simply saying that we have a little more time to think through the STEM piece, and then kind of last but not least, and I feel like I'm filibustering here on the microphone, but on the last piece with regard to North, I think that I think when you see, the Firestone Parks and the Kenmores, finally getting, proper attention paid and resources poured in, I think that when we start talking about passing a levy and/or a PI levy, I think our chances of passing it in those communities is greatly improved. And so I know I've talked to the council person in Firestone Park who's been unabashedly vocal about, about his willingness to advocate, not just in his ward, but go travel other wards to advocate in passage of levies, assuming that we finally take care of Firestone Park, right? I mean, so these are the political realities that we're dealing with, and if we're really going to bring the entire the entire city on board, the entire district on board, I think we have to give before we can ask for anything more, and I think we're positioned where we can do that. Last but not least, with regard to North, again, I do think that I'm confident that we'll be able to pass the requisite levies because you'll have an energy, that is in the community in places where you haven't seen an energy in a long time, like at Kenmore and like at Firestone Park. We've just put, we're energizing the Booktoe cluster. We have state champions there. We have a new field out there, right? We got to get some lights. But the turf is out there, right? Thank you to the Cleveland Browns again. We have an energy, in Ellet. We have an energy in we have an energy in the Firestone cluster around the Firestone High School facilities, the swimmers and things like the baseball fields. So again, so this is a rising tide, that is. That I think that we have to be ready and willing to leverage, and part of that's a marketing campaign too, right? Like we have to talk about the things that we're doing too. So I'm sorry. I think I talked for about 6 minutes straight. So let me. I'm getting the high sign from Ms. McKittrick. So I'm gonna pause there, and if others want to weigh in. So, Ms. Autry.
Thank you for all of that. And so the piece about having a little bit more time around STEM, I would definitely appreciate that because it's given me a lot of indigestion moving STEM high school to Leggett. It really is. They've already had the experience in the middle school building. So, I know we were talking about logic last time, but logically that doesn't make sense to me. And so maybe if we had more time to explore some other options, I think I would prefer that. And I don't know, I don't have the information in front of me. I know at one point in time we talked about Morley. What was that number again for Morley?
Morley is, I think what's important to think about when you picture Morley, picture it as just a frame of a building, because that's basically what it would be taken down to in order to be rebuilt. I have had some experience in a building that was in similar condition that is now a beautiful building, but that total bill, so I firmly believe it can be done. It's a $20 million complete renovation to make that a full campus.
And does $20 million do everything it needs to do?
Yes, and those are fair. Those are what, month and a half ago numbers. So I think they're still solid numbers they're as solid as numbers as we could get. 20 million would, I believe, construct a beautiful STEM high school. It's just getting to the point where, you know, why, at least in my mind, why is North Phase 2 and Kenmore Phase 1? It's not because I have a recommendation to offer you that I prefer one over the other. It's simply because $80 million is a threshold that I'm uncomfortable recommending to you to go in debt to do. So, you know, I would love to see Morley built there. That solves a lot of problems, but it takes us to the $81 million number on the first phase of this project that I don't think I could in good conscience, and I've had enough conversations with our administrative team. I won't speak for you, but I'll speak for her for just 1 second. I don't think anybody supports the idea of a COPS issuance that high without some funding stream to support us. And that's why, to me, that ended up in Phase 2, and this ended up in Phase 1.
Mr. Alexander, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I'm getting called on first because I'm the only board member that's here in the room that didn't get called on this evening, so I want to make sure that I got called on. Yes. For information purposes, the closing of Kenmore High School was because the state came to us and said, if the numbers do not get up, then you have to close Kenmore High School. The building number was going to be eliminated if we didn't get it done within a certain period of time. And so that's why Kenmore was closed. We did not want to just leave Kenmore hanging, but that was what the state said we had to do. So we had to do that at that time. We had no choice. We have to, as Mrs. Autry said, we as board members, and it is difficult at times, have to look at the entire district. We can't just look at one cluster and not look at the other clusters and try as much as we can to be fair. And so we have to look at all our options and look at what we can do to make sure we can make things right in all areas of the district. We are not going to make everyone happy. Whatever decision we make is not going to make happy. We're going to be damned if we do, damned if we don't. So we need to put that out there as well. I do believe and want to, and I know the people, and I talked to previous Mayor Don Pasquale in person, and he came to us at that time when we had to close Kenmore High School, and he had a lot of words for us, but we understood it, and he understood in the end what happened and what occurred. And so I don't want to leave Kenmore high and dry either. I talked with Ms. Shipe, when I was president years ago. We tried to start a conversation to build a relationship between us and the board and the union, as well as to try to get some things done in the district. So I know that we have to do something there in Kenmore. I'm not against it, but I am also still advocating because we do have a lot of kids at North, and our numbers are high at North. And so North has to have something that goes there, and I'm advocating for them not because I went to school there, okay, but because they have the numbers, and when you have the numbers there, you got to have the school there, and they are the only school basically that doesn't have a new school. And I'm not saying we have to do it right now. I think we can do, as mentioned before, that we can do these things in phases probably, okay, and let's start on maybe one phase, and let's go and let's just talk about and discussing what would be the best next phase for us to move into, and then the next phase and continue to move on. So we'll have to do that as well. Dr. Hall said the energy in all those other places. There's a lot of energy in North, too. I want to say that. I don't want those kids to be left out. They won the tennis championship. They won the soccer championship. They've never won those ever that I can remember. And there's an energy there from those individuals there. So we got to look at everybody, and we got to try to make it fair. I am an ex-athlete, and my school, my college was paid for through an athletic scholarship. But I always say student-athlete first. And so we're students first and athletes afterwards, because if we don't have the academics, you're not going to get a scholarship to go to college. That's just not going to happen. So we're student athletes, and I want to be able to give them something too. and I know this is not going to be sound good to all my athletic people out there, but we can kind of look at how we can phase that in as well. We've been talking about an athletic facility for the district for years now, and we're trying to figure out where can we get the monies from. This is a good start. And I'll give you some credit on that because you said that we can start looking at an athletic facility, and we can start putting some dollars maybe towards that if we need to. And I think we should do that. But we got to look at everybody, and regardless of what decision we make, we're going to make some people unhappy. And we have to make sure the decision we make, though, is for the benefit and the better of the entire district, okay? And we got to look at those. And again, if we have to phase some of these things, then let's phase them in. I don't mind that, but that way we might be able to give more than we're trying to give at this point in time right now by giving it all at one time. Because maybe if we don't pass a levy, which I'm normally optimistic, but I don't think we're going to pass a levy. I hope that we do pass a levy. But if we don't, maybe we can ask again, and then maybe the second time. Or if we don't pass it in, maybe a third time, and we can get the money to be able to do what we need to do in our district. So I just want to make that clear so everybody knows what's going on in there who's watching. These are some facts that I'm giving, and we want to make sure, too, that we look at all of them. Because when we're elected, we're not elected from one cluster or ward. We're elected from all of them. And so we owe everybody in the district to give them what we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. So for all the reasons he just gave, I'm still in favor of option 7, which I think was the last one we talked about. So whether that's the one I just was kind of talking through with the 546 number at the end. Mr. Alexander gave all the reasons as to why I think that's the best option. And so because it does happen in phases, it does address North. There is a plan for that from a funding standpoint around a PI and around a PI as well as an operations levy. Allows us to break up the work, and so that's why for me that's the plan that I am going to now publicly be supporting is that plan. Because it also allows us to slow down a bit on the STEM speed on the STEM piece. We could choose option 7 and slow down and not do the part where we're retrofitting or moving anything to Leggett. We can take some time and think more about that. Just as a clarification question, because I know I've gotten this question a number of times and I keep forgetting to talk about it in public session, but the square footage at Leggett is 54,000 approximately square feet, and NIF, the NIF building, the STEM building, middle school building is 127,000 square feet. What is the square footage at Morley? Ballpark?
Square footage in Morley is about 65,000 square feet.
So it's basically about the same size as, a little bigger than Leggett.
Yeah.
Okay. I just asked a question because I know that there were some folks who were upset about moving anything to Leggett because the square footage was so much less, and some of these folks were also advocating for Morley. I just want to point out that Morley is not much bigger than Leggett if we're talking about square feet. So I just want to make sure that we clarified that publicly too. So days in, we're either going to decide to do something or decide not to do something, right? We have spent a lot of time walking through these plans, and so I'm going to really be encouraging us, the next board meeting or 2 possibly, but really trying to get us to make a decision as a board, because they're timing around pots of money as well, the ESSER piece. If we're going to use those dollars for that purpose, we're running out of time. And so I know that we talked about, from my standpoint, I would love for us to be able to make a decision on the 24th. Which is our regular board meeting next Monday, around what plan we're going to use. Obviously, that's a board decision. That's not my decision, but I'm going to advocate for that. I'm going to advocate for option 7. So I guess Dr. Thompson, do you want to ask something else?
I think I heard a slight compromise. Can I just make sure think I heard what I thought I heard? A compromise being the $15 million on the athletic complex, that perhaps that number could be a seed money instead of the full amount. Correct. In other words, maybe it's $5 or $6 million. I would like to seek out architects and at least get a rough idea of what it would cost to build a turfed football stadium with an all-weather track. That's our greatest athletic need.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know what that would cost. I don't want to even estimate, to guesstimate, because I keep being way short. It's astronomical what construction costs have done. But perhaps what I think I heard was to maybe enough seed money to do that, and then the superintendent and her team and I would seek funds to phase that in, to do a baseball field, a soccer field, a softball diamond, and complete the complex with donated funds, and then perhaps shift 10 million or 9 million of those dollars into the Kenmore building so that we can drive down that COPS deal a little bit lower. Sure. I think making Todd more comfortable, making all of us a little, who are concerned obviously about the financial impact, and that's sort of a compromise. Is that something you want to see?
Yes, I think roger that.
And the STEM, we do have some time. The only thing that I would like you to do, not that I don't trust you, very trustworthy people, but I would like a hard date when you're going to make a decision, so that, and joking aside, obviously by kicking this, we're saying that there's no possibility of STEM construction because we couldn't possibly get that done. What it would mean is retrofitting something else that's out in the community that we're unaware of, finding space on the UA campus, which we're unaware of, or retrofitting Leggett or some other CLC is what that would be our search window in order to make this work in an appropriate amount of time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. Yep. Okay. All right. Other questions or comments? Okay. All right. I think that is it. Dr. Thompson, thank you for your time. So next we're going to move to item 3.1. So this item here, we're really trying to, this is the portion of the show where we select a search firm. Again, I know that we've had the documents in place for a couple weeks for us to review ahead of time of these presentations, and so the thought is that we would be ready to make a decision on the search firm this evening. And so I just wanted to, ask if there's any additional thoughts or comments that board members have as to who their preference is for a search firm.
We're making that decision tonight.
Right, that's the goal. Roger that. Yep.
The board members.
We have a quorum.
Well, I'll say my top two, Ray Associates and then ESC.
Okay, that's same for me as well. Okay, so then we got to pick one of the two.
I'll speak again. Ray and Associates is my number one.
Okay. Ms. Autry, I feel like you're going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say what I liked about each one of those. I mean, I like the fact that they are the oldest and largest, Ray and Associates, and the biggest pool of applicants. I like that piece. I like their team and the experience of their team. The one thing I liked about ESC is they said about the school community is one. And I really, really like that part because I heartily believe that, there's the most important partner are the students in my book, but I know there's others that disagree with that. But essentially, the school community is one. So I did like that philosophy behind ESC. And they were a little bit more cost effective because I did look at that as well. So, but I'm still not at a choice at this moment.
Okay. All right, Ms. McKittrick? Okay, I also will be advocating for Ray and Associates as my top choice. They were a nice mix of Ohio and national. I like the fact that they had a superintendent that's just right up the road. and so I like that they have a great deal of experience, and they're doing the Columbus district too. I think that carries some weight with me as well, that they were selected to do that, because there's a lot of sharp people in that district and on their board. So I feel a little more confident knowing that another large respected district also chose them. But I also like that they led with the equity piece. They led with their statistics around the number of their associates who are women and/or people of color, persons of color. So that mattered to me that we didn't have to ask that question. They largely put that out front. So that was something I was a big fan of as well. And yeah, I mean, as I walked through their proposal, I just thought it was extremely well organized. Not taking nothing away from ESC, but they felt to me like they were a bit more Ohio centric. And I think that if we're looking at a tightened timeline, I want to make sure that we have, going with a firm that has more of a natural reach. I want to make sure that we have the right pool of candidates. So for me, those are all reasons why I think Ray & Associates is a firm that I would be supporting us choosing. So Ms. McKittrick's giving me the thumbs up over there as well. So we need at least three of the four of us have to support one in order for us to move forward. So I think Mr. Alexander, did you state your preference? You said Ray & Associates was your preference? Yes. Roger that. Ms. McKittrick, you as well. Ms. Autry, is this unanimous?
Yes.
Okay, so
we need to make a motion.
So we can't vote on it yet. Okay, so our board counsel's here tonight, and she was helping me with the cheat sheet. Thank you, Ms. Jingo. And so we need to amend. Amend the agenda to add the selected search firm. So, for example, if you put them on board docs, it's actually blank. That now therefore be resolved, but the board selects blank. So I need to make a motion. So I'm motioning to amend the agenda to add Ray & Associates in that blank there.
Second.
Ms. McKittrick, do you? No. It's no. This is under. If you pull up the resolution under approval. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I'm looking at. Let's see. I don't see. You mean the actual? Let's see here. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yep. So we can amend that too to strike that out. Yep. Yeah. So we can amend that, make that amendment as well. All right. So is there a motion to amend? So we'll do two. So this is going to happen procedurally. This would be three motions here, right? So there'll be a motion to amend the resolution to insert Ray & Associates in the blank next to the now therefore be resolved. So
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. Roll call, please, Mr. Atkins.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. McKittrick?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 4-0. Next, we need to amend, need a resolution to amend the resolution 23 so this is also part of the resolution to make a second amendment to it to redact NJ Akbar from the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. McKittrick, seconded by Ms. Autry. Roll call, please, Mr. Atkins.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
So now the third and final resolution would be the passage or the approval of the resolution, which is the selection of a search firm to assist the board with the search of a superintendent. Is there, and it's amended, the amended version of this.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been seconded by Ms. Autry. Roll call, please. I'm sorry, any discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Atkins.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. We have a search firm. Congratulations. So next, we are going to move into executive session. I need a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to ORC 121.22G1 for the purpose of considering the employment of a public employee or official of the school district. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Ms. Autry. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. McKittrick. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call, please. Mr. Atkins?
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
We stand in recess at 8:04 p.m. Thank you.